Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supergirl. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, picking up where the last episode left off, we had Brainy and Nia being captured by our, collectors. But luckily, Kara shows them in time, saves them. And I was actually surprised because I thought, oh man, she'd get captured and everything. But it's like, no, everything in that moment got resolved. I'm like, oh, things must come unresolved later on. Because, this was all resolved in, the first couple minutes of the episode. But then we immediately see, oh, there's Kat recording all of this. So it's like, okay, there we go. And obviously it's the conversations about, everything is kind of resolved. I like the thing that Brainy was like, oh yeah, don't worry, we got we called the intergalactic police to kind of deal with that. And Kenny's like, whoa, there's space cops, which I was like, well, the only space cops, I'm sure, I think there probably are, because everyone will always describe, the Green Lantern Corps as, space cops, but there actually are, straight up just space cops in the DC universe, besides, they're on a different level. But I think there are legitimately just space cops. I could be mistaken. I don't know. But it's because they didn't go out of their way to say the Lantern Corps, but you would think that. But truth be told, it's I said that, but that's not actually what I did. It's he's making sure that the space-time continuum goes back to the way it was, so he's making sure they end up in Uruguay, so they end up getting arrested 3 days from now, like they originally did in the original timeline. So it's try to make everything go back in line. But it's huh. Well, because truth be told, once again, we don't know the full extent of everything crisis-wise. Because they set it up to be multiverse-wise, that the potentially that Green Lantern show that's coming on HBO Max that recently got cast with Guy Gardner, that could be because I think Greg Berlanti is doing that one on HBO Max too, so that could be the Earth 12 Lantern we saw on because also depending on how they do that full scale wise, because that's supposed to take place in the 80s, the TV show, but it's also going to span decades and stuff like that between different lanterns and stuff like that regardless. But it could just be that could be their way of filling that in, just Stargirl's Earth 2, once again Doom Patrol and Titans, because Titans is Earth 9. I always forget what Doom Patrol is. It's 20 something. Swamp Thing was 19, so on and so forth. So it just kind of gets my mind racing of so that is kind of potentially establishing maybe because of Crisis on Earth Prime in this universe that the Lantern Corps is established. I mean, we know Atlantis exists in this universe, so regardless, tangents and all that aside, obviously it's time to get ready for the prom and everything. So we have Alex and Kara, and I really like that conversation between them, because Kara's kind of apologizing, but Alex is no, it's okay. The fact of the matter is, you and Kenny doing supering, not only did you save the day, but you saved yourself and everything. And it's for Alex, it's a situation of the responsibility of looking after Kara was thrust on her by her dad, and it's so she's always had this overwhelming responsibility to look after Kara, and obviously she was able to kind of live her life the moment she went off to college. But the moment I came back, you and Kenny supering, she felt like it was being threatened that basically Kara, doing what she was doing was kind of going to take her life away, again. But it's I recognize, you are in a position where you can make your own choices and are going to, that you're okay. I don't have to, worry that you're in a process of, obviously for Kara trying to figure out what she wants for her life, and obviously she has to make a choice, and she's I just hope it's the right one. And Alex is whatever choice you make is going to be the right one, because it's you making a choice, not the choice being made for you. So obviously the meteor shower being pretty and everything, Kara and Kenny having their moment together. I should also note, this episode makes me feel nostalgic. I didn't bring it up last episode, but the prom and everything this episode really hit, where it made me go, all right. It makes me kind of wish I'd went to my own prom, because this is taking place in 2009. I was still in high school in 2009. I was it was my second attempt in my junior year. If you don't know, I've actually talked about it before, but it's scattered across different videos and maybe reviews and stuff like that. Maybe just videos in general, but I had to repeat my junior year. So 2009 was my second attempt. Well, 2009 to 2010 was my second attempt in my junior year. But hearing the songs they play to made me nostalgic. I was I remember that song. It's just it kind of hit me. It's one of those things too. It's right, I never actually went to my prom. One of those things of it's not oh, I'm too cool to go to my prom. It's also I was kind of a loner. I like socialize with people to a certain extent. Obviously, I'm the like introvert that I am, so not to a large extent, but enough of an extent to be like, okay, like but I always kind of kept people at a distance. So that's one of my biggest regrets about high school. I wish I was like a lot more like open with people and like took more chances and like went to prom and stuff like that, even if it was just to hang out and stuff like that. But regardless, tangents and all that, it just made me the episode just made me kind of feel nostalgic in that regard. But it was also badass seeing Kara just like fly up there and punch the Rock. But it also showed you like, man, Clark's kind of an asshole, isn't he? He didn't teach you anything. It's like, he didn't teach you about kryptonite. Because she's like, what is this? It's like, this is her first time experiencing kryptonite. Because even Alex said, like, present day being like, yeah, first time she ever saw Kara bleed. And I was like, yeah, why didn't Clark? I guess because Clark was like hoping that you live a normal life. Because I'm assuming he didn't well, because I think their mom never knew, Eliza never knew that they were supering, at least Kara was, or maybe she did and just never said anything. So I guess it never got back to Clark or what she was up to. But also for him, it's probably a thing of, well, I gotta let her discover things on her own, like, you know, so he probably never realized that she ran into kryptonite until much later in life or something like that. It's just one of those things where you're like, you should prepare your cousin for that. Like, you've been Superman for a while to know, like, oh yeah, like, kryptonite's on this planet, it can cause issues, you know, especially being poisonous to the both of us. You know, it's just something to think about. Also, at the same time, actually prior, we had Kat releasing the aliens, because it's like, oh, she shows up to the ship and everything, and it's like, nosy reporter causing issues, and she ends up setting them free. Also, I wonder, did they stop saying the word blackberry? Because he's like, oh, and the guy's sniffing it and being like, oh, this doesn't seem like a black, and she's reaching for it, and he doesn't get to say the full word, and we're like, oh, because if you probably said what brand of phone it was, you probably have to pay for it. So by just saying like black and not actually saying the full thing, you don't have to pay for it. That's probably the way of skirting around that. But also, I think it's supposed to be like, well, it's also 2009 because like Blackberries are like hot shit back then too. Like, I'm assuming, you know. So it was just something interesting. I was like, oh, you cut that at just the right time instead of saying the full product's name. Like, I guess that's where you can kind of skirt around that maybe without having to pay like a whole bunch of licensing for that. Regardless, it was just a tangent and everything. So there's also the aspect of Nia having that dream, because for her it's like, whoa, we took care of those guys, but I'm seeing an empty cage, and I'm hearing that pink creature again. It's like, what's that about? And so she's not thinking too much of it, but when the time comes, like, obviously they're helping Kara, and, you know, Kenny ends up sacrificing himself and like, hey, I'm the Kryptonian, take me. But they end up finding out he's a human and planning on using him as bait, which I love the moment between him and Kat, where it's just kind of like he's kind of figuring out, like, oh, this connects to this. And he's like, oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm so useless. I can't do anything for my girlfriend. And she's like, all right, enough with the pity party, like, Kendall. And he's like, no, it's Kenny. And I'm like, yes, here's the getting of getting, because she hasn't really been in a position where she says people's names. Like, it didn't come up last episode. I was like, yeah, getting people's name wrong. That's a Cat Grant I know and love. It's so good. Takes me back to season 1 and season 2. It's so good. And especially because later on, when like Kara's name comes up, she's like, Kira, the entire world's going to know your name. It's like, it fills your heart with warmth, especially this being the final season. Hearing her call Kara Kira one more time, it's like, it's so good. It's so good. But nevertheless, like, she kind of gave Kenny a pep talk and everything. Like, the fact is, calling him, like, you know, smart. The fact is, it's like, you know, and we'll kind of get out of here. And she kind of pepped him up, and he's like, yeah, you know. At the same time, Brainy and Nia are trying to stop Kara from getting involved, you know, just because it's like she's going to sacrifice herself. But it's like, all right, we got to stop this. Really quickly, too, I also love, like, they walked into the hallway and they saw that teacher listening and dancing to the music to herself. I'm like, and they're just kind of looking like, I just love that it's just like a random scene thrown in there. I mean, I guess it's just kind of supposed to show you the vibe of, like, it ain't just the kids getting down, the teachers are getting down to. I guess that's what it's supposed to represent. But, Nia and Brainy plan on handling this themselves, but ultimately Kara ends up getting out of the room, because for her it's like, Kenny does so much for me, the very least I can do, like, you know, so she wants to, like, at least help him out in this regard of, like, I've got to do something, I've got to be the one to help him. So Alex, you know, kind of picks a lock, and it's like, yeah, you know, the whole situation of yeah, I learned this at college, but also like she's in the light of the moon, and it's like, oh yeah, I got my second win, which I'm like, has that come up? Like, I know, I want to say, was that during, that was, had to be during season 4, because it was during the Red Daughter storyline, where obviously, like, she had to get recharged from the moon and stuff, or something of that nature. It was like, did they reference it? I swear, like, I vaguely remember her saying that before, like, my second wind. It sounds familiar. It immediately made me think of, like, The Boys, Huey and Starlight, you're my second wind. I was watching something recently about The Boys, and I kind of that's why that was kind of in my head. But it was like something Supergirl related. I feel like I vaguely remember Kara saying something about a second wind, but maybe I'm wrong. Like I'm like prior to this or something. I don't know. I could be mistaken. But nevertheless, sneaking aboard the ship and obviously like breaking Kenny and CJ out, and it's like, wait, that's Kat, and it's like, wait, Kat. And it's like, because at first I had to stop because I was like, right, did Brainy never actually ever got to meet Kat, right? Because Kat was like working with the president at the time of, yeah, I don't think they ever actually got to meet. That's why I was like, oh, like, of course Neo would be aware because it's like, well, you work at Catco, so like you know the former boss like well, you know, it would be familiar with the former boss at the very least, at least know of her. So it's like, oh, here you are, Kat, and it's like now it clicks in her head, like, all right, her dream and everything. Oh yeah, that she skipped over it too. Like she was having a vision, and like she stops like the Pink Panther from attacking her because she's trying to read the cage, and it says PW. And even I was like PW, because my idiot self was like Pennyworth. It's like, no, stupid, that doesn't work like that. Because it's Alfred Pennyworth, you stupid. I was like PW. It didn't click in my head. Perry White. But what was so dope is that in that moment, like she came out of her vision, like her dream, like that her hands were like that energy was going in her hands. I'm like, what the hell is that about? And she summoned the Panther, and as like Brainy kind of labels it later on, it's like, oh, that was lucid dreaming. It's like, holy crap, I was like, wait, you can pull stuff out of your dreams now? That's sick. And also it being lucid dreaming, like, oh, that's very befitting, because obviously lucid dreaming is when you become aware that you're dreaming and you can kind of control your dreams. So like for her to be able to kind of bring that into reality is like, that's a sick upgrade to her abilities. That's so dope to kind of see, like, you know, the progression of her powers in that regard. Once again, she still doesn't know what she's fully capable of. Obviously, she's still in the process of learning. But yeah, that Kat and seeing the Pink Panther and everything, and the PW now knowing like it was Perry White, like it all kind of clicked into place of like what this is all about. So they end up dealing with the aliens, but the aliens pop away. There's also like land shark creatures on the lower parts of the zoo that got released. So it's like, wait, we got to deal with them. Wait, there's a whole bunch of cops here. Kara and Kenny leave and obviously get arrested, and now it's like, wait, it's like, oh, her whole situation's on blast, and it's like, what do we do? Like Brainy's freaking the hell out, and it's like, we're kind of screwed in this. But then like Neo was like, well, we go back in time, but obviously for Brainy it's a paradox thing of like, no, we can't do that, because like if we like land like a millisecond off from where we're kind of supposed to, like we could like have major ramifications, like the ripples down the timeline we aren't aware of. She's like, so let's not go back the full 2 days. Let's just go back a couple hours before Kat, like, you know, like stop her from recording and releasing those guys. So they do that. But sadly, they did it around a Kryptonian with the super hearing, so Kara sneaks aboard while they do it, and it's like, she's like, I know I shouldn't have done that, but for her, it's like, I'm 17, and in that moment, I saw the rest of my life, like, flashing before me, because also, like, it's like, now I'm exposed to the world and everything, being in handcuffs. It's like, it's a situation of, like, it makes you also wonder, like, what her life would have been like in that timeline of, like, now that, like, it's all out there. Because it's also, like, there's no, like, Kara Danvers. Like, oh, there would have been Kara Danvers, but she would have just always been, like, Kara Zor-El. Like, she would have always kind of potentially just been Supergirl, you know, without, like, her human identity and stuff like that. So maybe that's an element that would, I don't know. But obviously it's, like, the life she didn't really want for herself because she's 17 and trying to figure out what life she does want for herself. And so it's, like, them trying to figure out everything. And it's like, okay, Nia, you go deal with Kat. Hey, Kenny! And it's just like, they're like, what are you wearing? And he's like, what are you wearing? He pokes Alex. Alex knocks his hand away, and he's like, I am so sorry, Alex. I will explain everything to you. And I was like, I love that. Like, even as a teenager, Alex still has so much. Well, she's like a young adult, because she's probably like, I don't know what the age difference between Kara and Alex is. Like, she's in college, so I'm assuming like she is a teenager too, but she might be in like her early 20s. Like she might be like 19, 20, like on that cusp. But the fact of the matter is, like, he got free. He was like, I'm so sorry. It's like, because he's so used to, like, how, like, Alex gives him that look, and it's just like, she's so intimidating present day. It's like, she still has that intimidation even now. So the fact is, he was kind of about to break under the pressure like that was pretty dope. So it's like, oh, we kind of covered for that and stuff like that. And then you had Nia be like, oh, hey, Kat, you know, you're going to inspire so many women. You should go off and start your own multimedia thing. And she's like, Kat? It's like, oh, Perry just calls me CJ, and it's like, and then I was like, so what the hell does CJ stand for? Like, is it like Catherine? Like, had no one ever shortened it to Cat, or is it actually something else entirely? That's what I was like, oh, I thought like I just assumed. I was like, oh, and she's like, oh, well, from now on I'll be Cat Grant, and it's like, oh, okay, interesting. I also love the thing of like when Nia would initially run to her, she's like, are you? And she's like, if you say Lois Lane, I'm going to expire. But it's like, oh, you're Cat Grant. I know exactly who you are and everything. You're friends with Oprah. You know, come on, you're the woman that's friends with Oprah. She's like, I am, or you will be. You'd hope to be in the future, right? And it's like, yeah. So I love that whole situation. So putting Kat back on the right path and everything else got resolved and put in place. It's like, okay, we didn't change too much, but how do we know if it worked? And they disappear and it goes to a commercial. I was like, that's dark and depressing because time and stuff like that, like because they're from a different time period. Like I thought like this timeline is going to be set in place so that basically because of that, it ends up making them disappear because the timeline they were a part of no longer exists. Once again, that's always like the interesting rule of time travel because it's like some stuff makes it so that those timelines disappear. Other things make it so that like, oh no, those timelines still continue and exist. It depends on how you want to handle it. It seems like this is one of those things of like, oh yeah, that timeline like clicks into place in a sense that like, yeah, they go back to where they left in the initial timeline, but now it's like shifted over to this new timeline B with the changes. So it's like, hey, you know, Kara's excited because of what her future, you know, is kind of hers to make and everything. So everything's kind of set in motion and back on course. Obviously, the ship ends up getting transported to Uruguay, and it's like, so they're going to be arrested by the DEO. They go see Kat. Kat tells Perry, like, I'm done with this. I'm going doing my own thing. It's no longer CJ. It's Cat Grant. And we see, like, her drawing, like, that Pink Panther and, like, the Catco. So that's set in motion. Kara and Kenny had their moment, obviously, again. But this time, like, the meteor came and also things changed a little bit because Kenny was dodging meteors. He's like, whoa, he had to do it twice. We didn't see that the first time. Maybe we did it and I just missed it, but I'm fairly sure that didn't happen last time. So kind of showing you like, oh, there are some subtle changes. But, because this is also the Kara that went through everything, like changing things. And so she's talking to Kenny this time. And for him, it's like, yeah, like the universe kind of doesn't want us to have that conversation. And so she finally talks to him about like, it's like she wanted, like, for her entire life, she's kind of been locked into it. She didn't choose Midvale. She didn't choose these powers. It's just like where she landed and the circumstances. So she kind of got locked in. She's enjoyed supering with Kenny and stuff like that. It's fun and she likes it. But for her, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And I think that in itself could be an implication. Like, I don't see her giving up being Supergirl, but she was able to kind of just live her life as Kara Danvers for like, 7 more years? Maybe, no, not 7, because it's only been 10 years now. And so it's like 5 more years until like the beginning of Supergirl, like season 1, because she was like, 23 or something? Because she's like, it's suggesting she's like 27 now. So it's like, she was like maybe 22, 23 when she became Supergirl, if they're suggesting it's been like 10 years. So, I don't know. But nevertheless, it's like, you know, for her, she's trying to decide what she wants for her life. And, you know, she got accepted to this college. And, you know, it's like she wants Kenny to come along. But for Kenny, it's like, you know, you made me brave. Like, I felt like I was better with you around. He's like, because before you, I was a mess. My dad passed away. My mom like was staying in bed, you know, never get out of bed because of it. So for him, it's like I was going to school during the day, working at, you know, nights and, you know, weekends. But Kara, like, it kind of brought some stability to his life. It's like, you were that light in the darkness for me. And I thought that, you know, that was nice. And it's like, you know, Kara, even now, just being that symbol of hope, you know, even from the very beginning. But for Kenny, it's like, for him, it's like, I can't, like, being saved by you is fine, but it's like, it's something I've got to figure out for myself. Like, you know, I can't just be saved by you all the time. I kind of got to learn how to live without you, kind of save myself, figure stuff out without you. So, like, no, I can't go to the college with you. So this is them kind of saying their goodbyes to each other. But it's like, hey, like, what was it, something else, and like a Monty Python marathon is like, yep, that's best prom ever. So, which also begs the question, like, you know, in the grand scheme of things, are like, oh, so like, where is Kenny present day? Because obviously, like, Alex is like, oh, he's alive and everything, so it's like, what's his story present day? Like, you know, maybe when Kara comes, like, that might be a future thing they're setting up for the future episodes in this season, of being like, oh, and hey, Kenny's here. Yeah, like, we didn't throw that in there just for nothing. It's like, we're doing something with it present day. So but also, once again, you don't know the, like, ripple effect of, like, yeah, the changes that they made in certain regards. Like, maybe everything's, well, the way Brady's making it sounds like everything's exactly the same, so maybe there is no issue, everything's, like, back on the proper course. Because maybe if Kara hadn't, like, you know, been from that alternate time, like, seen that alternate timeline, then maybe she would have chosen to just stay with Kenny. So, because obviously everything was kind of off course already in that timeline, because the meteor wasn't where it was supposed to be, and like everything was like a little off course and everything. So, but luckily all the missions kind of worked out. They got what they needed, and, you know, obviously, you know, Nia's still a little hard on herself, but, you know, Brainy's like, if it wasn't for you, like, we were able to accomplish everything because you were able to interpret your dream, you were able to kind of do the lucid dreaming thing, and it's like, you, once we get back and save Kara, Supergirl, it's going to be because of you as well. So, you know, I also him kissing her like that, because it's like, I think they're still, like, unclear where 100% they are in things, but, you know, I hope, like, that fully becomes an established relationship again, because they were just, like, Brainy and Nia are just, like, so damn cute together, you know? They help each other so much, because even, like, you know, even at one point Brainy starts crying, she's like, are you crying? He's like, yeah, I've been, like, feeling a lot of negative emotions so long recently, but now I'm feeling, you know, I almost forgotten what it's like to feel the positive ones. And she's like, so what are you feeling now? And he's like, hopeful. And, you know, who are we saving? Our amazing paragon of hope, you know, even at such a young age, being a symbol of hope, even for, like, you know, so many people. And now, like, obviously it's like, let's go get back our symbol of hope, you know, present day and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see what they do with the next episode. I avoided the previews, so I'm curious, is it going to be, because of time travel, it's like it looks like they've only been going for like a second or something like that. Or maybe it might be kind of a Doctor Who thing of like, oh, we never kind of come back. Well, to be fair, like, Brainy kind of missed the mark beforehand. That was the whole joke last episode, so it could be a thing of, right, he might miss the mark again, kind of a very Doctor Who thing of like, oh, I was supposed to get you back here. Oh, you've actually been going about 3 days, even though I told you, like, oh, you might be going like a couple hours. Oh, you actually been going an entire week because I missed the mark on it. So we might have something like that. So we might see, like, what Alex and everyone else, the team, was up to while they were gone. Or it might just be a thing of like, yeah, they were going for like a second and we're back. Yeah, we accomplished everything. What went wrong? I think I brought this up last episode. What went wrong? Nothing. And maybe we'll find out, oh, some things did change. Oh, what do you mean things changed? Nothing, never mind. So maybe we'll get into that. Maybe we won't. I'm curious to see. But yeah, I'm really interested to see where ultimately all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Like, things kind of like had a very peaceful resolve. Like, I mean, it makes sense, but just like the Kitty and Kara thing, I was like, oh, like, it's, I don't know what I mean, I guess it kind of has to work out that way for, like, Kara to be where she is. Like, you know, they kind of had to break up for her to kind of branch out, you know, and find her place and decide what she wants for her life, you know, for herself, to make those choices. Because at the end of the day, there is no wrong choice. The right choice will always be the choice that you make for yourself, you know? So, but it was just kind of like a beautiful yet somber kind of ending to the episode. Just kind of like, oh, like, you know, no cliffhanger to a certain extent. It's just kind of like everything's like, once again, it's just kind of like going off with a little bit of hope. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting element to it. But yeah, I'm, like I said, interested to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.